Welcome to Cornerstone Coaching. We're providing rich content to help build your business. In this episode, Pastor Bob Flayhart shares on Joseph's transformation.
Thankfully, done a few of these, so we should be okay. But actually, it doesn't depend on me anyway. It's the Spirit of God. So I thought, as James said, hey, can you say something? The life of Joseph came to mind. I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph, but in the very first book of the Bible, there's this guy named Joseph. You probably know him regardless of your biblical background because of the coat of many colors. There's a Broadway play. There's been all kinds of stories about Joseph. There's lots of kids' books about Joseph. But it's one of the most significant stories in the entire Bible. It takes up about 13 chapters, the last 13 chapters of Genesis. It begins with Joseph when he's 17. And he has a dream, and in the dream, his brothers, he has 11 brothers, they're gonna bow down to him, and even his mother and father are gonna bow down to him. Well, his brothers get so ticked off about that, so jealous, they throw him into a pit, and he gets sold into slavery. And then they go back and tell their father that he's been killed by an animal. Well, so the first thing I want to say is you've got to have a vision. You've got to have a vision. And God's got to give you that vision. Now, I know there's all kinds of different persuasions in here this morning, different levels of where we are in a spiritual pilgrimage. So what I'm saying is, you know what it's like to get a flash of insight. You know what it's like to all of a sudden, I just experienced it this morning. Oh God, what am I going to do? and I wasn't even thinking about Joseph. Boom! Joseph comes into my mind, right? You've experienced that too. And what I'm telling you is that's God. Whether you believe it or not, that's God. Now, what you're going to find out through the story of Joseph is that vision that was really cloudy. He had no idea what it meant. His dad had no idea what it meant, right? Jacob. His brothers had no idea what it meant. Joseph had no idea what it meant. It had to iterate. It had to percolate over time. And that needs to happen in our lives, right? We get a flash of insight. I believe that's from the Lord. And then we need to get counsel. We look at life experience. So the dream happened when Joseph was 17. The dream wasn't fulfilled until he was in his 30s. Mm-hmm. So here's another thing. You're going to be in business. You're going to be a business owner. You need patience. Okay? So you got to have vision, and then you have to have patience for that vision to iterate and percolate. And likely what you end up with and where you end up is not where you thought you would. And I found business people that one of the struggles is sometimes they got latched on to a certain trajectory and they weren't willing to let it go. They weren't willing to let it morph. I've experienced that in my own ministry. Now, I've only ever pastored one church in my life. I've been at Oak Mountain for 37 years. Planted it 37 years ago. And I tell people I've only ever been at one church, but I've pastored 17 churches.
Yeah.
You get me?
Yep.
Okay? I had to morph. I had to change. I had to be transformed. I had to move with the flow. And if you're in business, you're going to have to learn to do that. And so you want to have your vision, and that core vision, it may not change at the core. Okay? I think anybody could understand Joseph's dream. He was going to be a leader. If his mom and dad and his brothers were all going to bow down to him, he was going to be a leader of some kind. But he didn't know. Only God knew at that time. So he needed vision. He needed to allow time for that vision to percolate and to iterate. And then he needed patience. So let me tell you, he needed patience because his life was about to get hard. Okay? And any successful business owner, business person, entrepreneur, you need courage. So, vision, patience, courage. First thing that happened to Joseph was he was sold into slavery. He needed courage. He needed faith. He needed to believe, okay, everything in my life right now says that vision I had is not true.
Oh, wow.
You're going to face that. You know, it's amazing how many business people I work with, and they'll say, well, I just think it's going to be this hard. Who told you that? Who told you that? It's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. Yeah, but I have a vision. It's like, I know it's a good... Yeah, it's going to be hard. Everybody be doing it if it was easy. So he had to face slavery. Then he was sold to be the household servant of one of the leaders of Pharaoh's troops and armies. And it ended up this guy's wife wanted to sleep with Joseph. See, you're going to face all kinds of distractions and temptations as a business leader. Mm-hmm. And you got to be ready for that. So Joseph chose to do the right thing, and as a result, that wife, who was jealous, told her husband that Joseph had abused her. And he was thrown in prison. Joseph was. He didn't do anything wrong. You got to be ready for that. You're going to try to do everything right. And no good deed goes unpunished. You're going to experience that. And the question is, do you have the stick-to-itiveness? Do you have the perseverance to run through those times, trusting God and staying true to your vision, while at the same time allowing God to morph how that vision is lived out? See, the core vision may not change. Actually, the core vision should not change. But what you think it means will be transformed over time. So then what happens is Joseph now is put into prison. He's such a leader. Okay, even for this leader of the troops of Pharaoh, everything Joseph did turned to gold. Now, by the way, that isn't always going to happen. Okay, you're not always going to have the Midas touch. Sometimes things are going to turn to rust. That doesn't mean that God doesn't want you to follow the vision. It just means there's ups and downs. There's seasons that we go through. And perseverance, again, is one of the things we need. So then he's in prison and he's such a leader. Notice the vision's core and the vision continues. Right? He was a leader among his family. He was punished for it. He was a leader. The guy's name is Potiphar. Everything he turned, Potiphar's household was transformed. The business was transformed. Everything prospered. He was punished for it. Now he's in prison. He's such a leader because he's got the core vision, right? He's still doing the original dream. He just didn't know that it was going to lead to all this. And oh, by the way, God is preparing him. He hadn't even gotten to the whole purpose of the vision yet. So this whole time is God preparing him. So then preparation is another element of being a business leader. What is God doing in your life right now that you might not even think is God? Think of the thing that's keeping you up at night. Think of the thing that when you're taking a shower is your burden. The things that you need to go work out because you're so concerned about it. You just need to get it off your mind. You need to work it off. Okay? I would submit to you that's likely God wanting to do something in your life and wanting to impact the vision, the core vision that he's given you. And so all these difficult times, they're times of preparation. They're times of forging. You know how you make forged steel? You know, you keep on putting it in the fire, dipping it in the water. Put it in the fire, dip it in the water. That's forged steel. Guess what? You're going to be in the fire. There's no way. Look, I've worked with so many successful business leaders. There's no way you're going to achieve what you think your vision is without going through the fire. And there's so many people that are surprised. It's like, why is this so hard? Who told you it wasn't going to be hard? Right? So Joseph then, he continues with this core vision. He then rises to the leader of the entire prison. Now, Pharaoh of Egypt has a cupbearer. He tastes the wine to make sure it's not poisoned. So he gets poisoned if anybody's trying to poison Pharaoh. And then there's the chief baker. Well, they both have dreams. They end up in prison because they ticked off Pharaoh about something. And he was easy to tick off, right? You ever work with people like that? No matter what you do, they get angry about something. Well, that was Pharaoh. So the chief cupbearer and the chief baker are in prison. And they tell Joseph their dreams. And God gives Joseph the interpretation of the dreams and says the cupbearer is going to be restored to Pharaoh and the chief baker is going to be beheaded. And it happens. So when the cupbearer goes, Joseph says, hey, remember me to Pharaoh. He didn't. Years pass. We're gonna go through seasons where it's like, why isn't this happening? Think about Joseph. Okay, over a decade has passed now. He had the dream. He's been a leader, but he just knows I'm still not where the original vision led me to believe I would be. Mm. And he's just faithful. Okay, so sometimes in business, all you can do is be faithful. You just keep being faithful. Keep doing the next right thing. And leave the results to God. Okay? Yeah. Sometimes we get so focused on results that we miss the process. And I would submit to you, whether it's 37 years in ministry or 37 years in business, so much is just showing up and doing the next right thing. It takes time. There are very, very few shooting star businesses. It happens. Tends to be a fluke, right? You just happen to be in the right place at the right time with the right idea. That's not always going to happen. We just need to be faithful. So finally, there's a problem with Pharaoh. He has a dream. And the cupbearer says, "Oi, I forgot. There's this dude in prison. He can interpret dreams." So Pharaoh brings Joseph into his presence. Joseph interprets the dream, says there's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, and puts Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. Joseph's number 2 in one of the greatest empires of world history. Joseph is number 2. And Pharaoh says, whatever this man tells you to do, you need to do. So God gives Joseph wisdom. He is now at the fulfillment of the vision. He is responsible for the welfare of an empire. By the way, don't ever forget, you're not in business for business' sake. Mm-hmm. You're in business for people. Mm-hmm. You're in business to take care of God's creation. Mm-hmm. You're in business as a steward. Mm-hmm. There's a really big book out for several years now called Know Your Why or Finding Your Why. Mm-hmm. Your why better not be your bottom line. Your why better not be, I want a lake house in 20 years. Your why needs to be, how is God made be a steward of his creation? Whether it's the environment, whether it's, obviously, again, even behind that, it's the people. God ultimately wants his crown of creation, human beings, taken care of. And that is the only reason to be in business. And then God gives you the vision, and then as the vision connects to God's plan, then you'll see fruit. And that's exactly what happens in Joseph's life. So he takes care of the years of plenty, stores all kinds of grain because he knows the famine's coming. And the famine comes, and now we get back to Joseph's family. They're starving too. They're way on the outskirts of the empire. But they said, hey, I hear Pharaoh has all kinds of grain. So Jacob sends all of Joseph's sons, and they meet Joseph, but they have no idea who he is. Because, his looks have changed, years have changed. It's been, 14, 15 years by now. And they don't recognize him, but he recognizes them. And eventually, I won't get into the whole story, but he reveals himself to his brothers. And they all weep. And then Joseph gives them all grain so they don't starve. They go back to Jacob. They tell Jacob Joseph is alive. And then eventually Jacob and all of his sons go before Joseph, and you see the dream fulfilled. He bows down. Jacob bows down. All of his brothers bow down. And the dream Joseph had when he was 17 is fulfilled. But it took 17 years. Do you have the patience? Do you have the perseverance? Do you have the courage? Do you have the vision? Do you have the love? Do you have the faithfulness? Let me answer that for you. No, you don't. You don't. Only dependence on God can give you that. Now, are there people that make it in business without God? Yeah. I promise you, I've been with people like that. And their brokenness is going to show up somewhere. Either in a failed marriage or, wild kids. Not that godly people can have wild kids. But in, just wacko priorities. It's going to happen. Even if people aren't dependent upon God for all of those characteristics I just said, it's like whack-a-mole. The mole is going to come up somewhere. And so as you consider what you're doing in your business, what your vision is, what you want to be, keep in mind the story of Joseph. Read Genesis 37 to 50. There is so much in there about what it means to be a leader in your particular area, right? In your particular vision. So I hope that is an encouragement to you.
Thank you.